Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for the Public Service and Transportation Budget Hearing. During this hearing, we will review and comment on the mayor's proposed 2026 operating budget as it relates to the Department of Public Service. I am excited to be joined by my vice chair, Councilmember Day Ackower. Before we begin, I want to remind folks about what we are talking about today. And I know that, especially for folks that are watching at home, as we have conversations about the budget, I like to say there is no best committee. But if there is a committee that people care about deeply, it is certainly the Public Service Committee, because this is the committee that deals with how people move about the city. Sidewalks, roadways, bikeways. And so as we think about the investments that we are making, I know that when folks think about that sidewalk that they've been advocating for in their community, or the road that hasn't been repaved in 20 years, or whatever may be happening, when we are talking about how we're allocating funds, I know that this is something that folks care deeply about. And so whenever we're talking about the budget, I always like to give folks a reminder so that we level set, because whether you're joining us for the first time in this conversation, or this is one of many budget conversations that you have had, I just want to ensure that we're giving folks the correct information. So yearly, we pass two budgets. One is the operating budget, and the second is the capital budget. So the operating budget, which is what we will be talking about today, funds daily city services. So think about things like salaries, supplies, and everyday maintenance. While the capital budget invests in large, long-term infrastructure projects like the larger roadway projects, parks, new buildings. The operating budget covers the ongoing costs, while the capital budget focuses on physical assets, often funded by bonds or dedicated revenue streams. And so I want to make that distinction, because as we talk about the budget today, especially with public service, it feels a little tricky, because when we think about everyday maintenance, or when we think about roadway projects and those improvements, they sometimes lie in both budgets. And so often when we're talking to community advocates and when we're talking to our area commissioners, I remind them that we have many opportunities to fund the things that they care about, that they want in their communities. So what you will see today, again, is a reflection of our ongoing maintenance as a department, of how we're both taking care of our people who work here within the city, that also take care of our roadways, ensuring that people get to the places that they need to get to. So joining us today for the hearing, we have from the department, Deputy Director Andrea. Andrea, tell me how to say your last name so I always remember.
Losick.
Losick. I'm deeply invested in getting that right. Deputy Director Andrea Losick, also with Deputy Director James Young and Rory McGinnis. And so I will turn the floor over to you. We might stop along the way to ask questions. Vice Chair, I invite you to also jump in along the way, just so we can make this a little bit more conversational and folks don't have to wait to the end for those questions. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Chair Barosa de Padilla and Councilmember
Can you
Day
move the
Ackower.
mic a little bit closer? It's a little hard to hear you.
Every time, it gets me every time.
I know. Well, it's also if you talk loud, then it picks up and folks are scared.
Is this better?
Yeah, so much better.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Barosa de Padilla and also Councilmember Day Ackower. Thank you for this opportunity to present the highlights of the Department of Public Service's proposed 2026 operating budget. The Department of Public Service is comprised of the Director's Office and 5 divisions. We have refuse collection, traffic management, infrastructure management, mobility and parking, and design and construction. For the 2026, the Department of Public Service is proposing an operating budget of $178.9 million, which represents a 9.1% decrease, or $24.7 million less than compared to 2025. The proposed budget supports 847 full and part-time employees who deliver many of the city's most essential services, and those include refuse collection, services such as residential, bulk, recycling, yard waste, maintaining and improving city roadways, including pothole repair and snow and ice control, which we're all interested in right now. The installation and maintenance of traffic signals, signage, and pavement markings to promote public safety, and the management of both on-street and off-street public parking facilities, as well as improving safety and accessibility for pedestrians and bicyclists throughout the city. The Department of Public Service is supported by 5 distinct funding sources, and in 2026, more than 81% of the department's operating budget is funded from sources other than the general fund. The largest funding source is the Street Construction Maintenance and Repair Fund, which provides $93.2 million, or 52.1% of the department's total proposed budget. Approximately 67% of that is from revenues that come from gas tax and auto license fees, directly linking the transportation use to infrastructure investment. The general fund provides $32.8 million, or 18.3% of the proposed budget. These dollars primarily support the refuse collection division, along with a limited portion of the director's office, about $500,000. The Construction Inspection Fund contributes $13.6 million, representing 7.6% of the budget, while the Private Inspection Fund provides $7.8 million, representing 4.4% of the budget, and both of those are supported by user fees tied to capital improvement activity. And then finally, we have the Mobility Enterprise Fund. This supports $31.4 million of the budget, or 17.6% of the total proposed budget, funding parking and mobility services through user-generated revenue.
When you say user-generated revenue, can you talk a little bit about what that is specifically?
Sure. So when we're talking about user-generated revenue, the Mobility Enterprise Fund, that's what it is. So it was established in 2022 to support the city's parking and mobility system in a sustainable way. It is a self-supporting fund funded through parking transactions and citations, revenue generated by the users of the system. These revenues are used to cover the full cost of operating the city's parking system, including staffing, equipment, enforcement vehicles and technology, parking payment and citation processing systems, and any garage debt service. The funding structure allows the city to maintain parking assets responsibly and reinvest revenues back into parking and mobility service as this city is continuing to grow. Does that
Thank
answer?
you. No, yes, absolutely. I wanted to just put a fine point on that because I think as we continue to talk about our budget, I mean, yes, we get money from revenues from taxes, but also these other funds where it is user generated. Every time you're going into a parking structure, you are then investing back into those dollars that go to support that line. And so, similarly at our last council meeting, we talked, you referenced this, when you pay those tax fees, right? When you're going to, at different times, we have taxes like similar to your utility bills where you're wondering where each tax line goes to. I always like to highlight that so folks then understand, as we're talking about, especially in this committee, we move large amounts of money, and I want the public to understand where those dollars then come from, right? And when you're paying all these different fees or taxes, that it is getting invested back into something else that you're seeing and that you're experiencing as a taxpayer.
So taking a closer look at the individual divisions, we'll start with the director's office. And the 2026 budget for the director's office is $14.3 million, representing 7.9% of the total proposed budget. The director's office provides coordination and policy direction for the Department of Public Service and supports key administrative and strategic functions, including fiscal management, human resources, community relations, asset management, and the legislative processing. A significant portion of the director's office is dedicated to asset management and data analytics. Beyond administrative support, The specialized team, which includes both GIS and data experts, drives operational efficiency, capital planning, and service optimization across all divisions within the department. For example, GIS and asset management tools help us identify where infrastructure investments will have the greatest safety and equity impact, supporting Vision Zero analysis, and improve coordination across divisions so we're not repeatedly opening and closing the same streets. This approach has produced measurable results, one of those being work within the Division of Refuse Collection. The asset management team worked to rebalance the collection routes, and that work resulted in eliminating 19 routes, saving the city about $1.2 million annually. And the asset management group has also launched the CLOSE program, which has been recognized and awarded. This is an integrated system that tracks and manages all planned, active, and emergency lane closures and steel plate placements in the public right-of-way. This tool improves safety, strengthens permit compliance, coordinates work across departments, and provides a single public-facing portal to keep residents and partners informed about traffic impacts. In short, these are not just administrative overhead positions. They are enabling roles that improve how the city deploys millions of dollars in operating and capital resources with efficiencies and avoided costs that so far have exceeded their expense. So this same asset management, data, and coordination capacity is essential as the department is taking on more complex projects and multi-agency initiatives, including Link Us, which is what we'll talk about now.
And I just wanted to ask a quick question before we move into these other buckets.
Yeah.
At the top of your presentation, you talked about the budget being, was it 1.5? Did I get that number right? Less than last year?
Yeah.
And can you talk about why is it less, and where, if we made those cuts, or was it a reduction in, you just talked a little bit about cost savings. Is that because of a cost savings? Is that because we knew that this was a tighter budget, we made cuts, and if so, where did we make those cuts?
It is a tighter budget, as you've mentioned, that did go into it. Most of it came from our Division of Refuse. Some of those funds that were previously in the operating budget have been moved over into the income tax set aside. So we're taking it out of the general fund and moving it to another funding source. And the finance department is also working on some other sources of funding for the refuse division. We also had some funds in there for some renovations that we did last year that are no longer needed this year. So that's another reason why the budget is reduced.
And because of that reduction, would our residents expect any sort of changes in their service, the refuse service?
Nope, the refuse service is going to remain the same. They will still have weekly recycling. They still will have collection every week as well. There will be no change in service. The 2 convenience centers will still be up and running. So there really shouldn't be any impact despite the budget for operating being lower.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so for Link Us, as we know, Central Ohio continues to be one of the fastest growing regions in the country and is projected to reach more than 3 million residents by 2050, nearly 1 million additional people over the next 25 years. To address this growth, the region is modernizing and expanding its transportation system through Link Us, a coordinated transportation and growth strategy. The goal is to create more walkable, connected communities, improve access to jobs, schools, and healthcare, and also increase opportunity across the region. The modernized transit system envisioned through Link Us, this was going to include 45% increase in COTA service, 500 miles of new and improved sidewalks, bike lanes, trails, and crosswalks across the region, the construction of 5 bus rapid transit lines or BRT lines, enhanced bus stations with features such as microtransit connections, platform-level boarding, heated platforms, all to improve accessibility in winter operations. So while much of the Link Us program investment is supported through capital funding, the operating budget supports the planning, coordination, and staff capacity needed to advance these projects and ensure that they are implemented successfully.
And I do have a question about the Link Us budget before you go to the next slide. So as we think about Link Us, so, and I think to make this clear for folks again, as as folks are watching, because Link Us is one of the other things that feels a little tricky, because this is we have the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Authority that is picking essentially from the tax dollars that folks have from the increase that our taxpayers voted on, right? That money is going towards Link Us, that is going to CODA, and that is also, we have the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Agency? No, Commission. I'm on this commission, guys. This is should be coffee, not water. So they are essentially regionally kind of choosing where we are investing those dollars in things like more sidewalks, bikeways, trails. We have CODA, who is essentially working on the bus system, right? And then we have our department that is essentially working on our roadways, getting them ready. What does the longer term view look like in terms of our budget, and as we allocate money towards that maintenance and those capital dollars, what does that look like in the long term? Does that make sense?
I think so. Rory is here, and he's the expert of all things Link Us. Do you want to take that one?
Sure. Chair Brosade Padilla, Vice Chair Dayakauer, thanks for the questions on Link Us. From a staffing perspective, we feel that we have the folks right now to be able to do the things that we need to do in coordination with CODA from a design review standpoint. We're also working with CODA on the maintenance of the bus rapid transit lines where they're using the bus-only lanes. So those are areas where we anticipate CODA will be helping to pay for the maintenance of those lanes. And in conjunction, our department will be doing a lot of that maintenance regarding those bus-only lanes. From a staffing standpoint, we're not sure that we need additional staff to do those, but as we build those and over time, we can see on a year-by-year basis if we're going to need additional staff to do those things. But I think right now we have the staff that we need to effectively be able to implement the program.
So for folks, just to not bury the lead here, so for folks who are watching as we are investing in our staffing, that is planning for what is coming. Capital dollars are being used for the built infrastructure, right? Later on, this will become part of our regular kind of maintenance that will become a regular portion of the budget moving forward, which would live here in the operating budget, move after we get past the phase where we're up and running. That's fair to say.
Yep.
I just, again, want to make that distinction for folks as they're looking at this and they're looking at these big dollars and where they're going. It feels, I think we certainly get a lot of questions around, there's so many different entities. Where are the dollars going? What is it going towards? So I just want to make this a little clearer for folks as they're watching and they're understanding where their investment is going. So thank you.
And that's definitely something that we're talking about. We've even looking ahead are looking at specialized equipment to make sure that we're clearing snow off of those shared use paths. We've got one in the works now, but we're looking at how can we be more effective and get more of those things online as we are growing through this, the Link Us and all the projects that we're doing as far as that goes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we can talk about refuse a little bit. I know that I'll keep it kind of high level because I know that we're going to have a larger discussion about it next week at another hearing. But it is a part of the Department of Public Service. So for the 2026 budget, the Division of Refuse Collection has a proposed general fund budget of $37.8 million. And this is supporting 184 full-time staff who provide weekly service to more than 344,000 households citywide. While the overall budget reflects a reduction from 2025, the proposed budget maintains core services, including weekly residential recycling, biweekly yard waste, and those kinds of things, which are key to the components of the city's climate action plan as well. In 2026, the budget includes $2.3 million for the Clean Neighborhoods Initiative, and that's funding 26 staff dedicated to solid waste inspection, alley cleanup, and enforcement. These efforts directly support the roadway safety, neighborhood access, and corridor maintenance by removing debris, tires, and bulk materials from streets, sidewalks, and alleys. The budget also continues funding for a dedicated litter response team focused on the public rights-of-way and also the waste and reuse convenience centers, which are reducing illegal dumping and help keep the transportation corridors clear.
And I know it's confusing for folks, so while it's under the department, this has been a long-standing separation of refuse that's actually under Councilmember Weitsch's area, where it's both refuse and recycling, and that's under another committee. It has been long-standing, so I appreciate you going through this portion of it. There will be a deeper dive during that particular hearing, but I always know it's confusing for folks because sometimes they'll reach out to me and I sometimes will pass the ball because they are the experts when it comes to refuge. So thank you.
Okay, now we can talk about mobility and parking services. The 2026 proposed budget for mobility and parking services is approximately $31.4 million, representing an increase of 15.5%, or roughly $4.2 million compared to 2025. The increase is primarily driven by internal cost realignments with long-term financial planning. So within the administration, personnel costs have been realigned to better reflect the level of service support provided to the mobility and parking services. This realignment reduces the portion of the administrative costs supported by the general fund and more accurately aligns user-generated mobility revenues with the services that they're supporting. In addition, the budget reflects forward-looking planning for future garage assets. While not yet fully realized, the potential addition of the Coleman Garage is expected to increase principal and interest costs in the future years. So incorporating it now into the budget allows for long-range planning to help us ensure the Mobility Enterprise Fund remains stable and sustainable. Overall, the increase reflects better cost alignment and responsible financial planning, not necessarily new programs or service expansion. The Division of Mobility and Parking Services is committed to providing safe, equitable, and predictable mobility and parking options for residents, visitors, and guests throughout the city of Columbus. The division supports a range of transportation planning efforts, including parking management, bicycle infrastructure analysis, traffic calming, and parking management. I'm sorry, I said that, and shared mobility. In addition, Mobility and Parking Services is responsible for the administration, enforcement, operation, and management of both on-street and off-street public parking facilities citywide. The Columbus Bike Plus plan is found within our mobility division, and that's was unanimously adopted in December of 2024 by council to establish a long-term vision for safe, connected, and comfortable transportation network for people of all ages and abilities so they can bike, scooter, and roll. The plan outlines an ambitious but yet achievable framework, including 487-mile vision network and 20 miles of prioritized near-term connections. The implementation of Bike Plus is primarily funded through the city's capital program, as well as complementary efforts such as those Link Us transportation system improvements that we were just speaking about. Those funding sources support the design and construction of bikeways and related infrastructure. The proposed operating budget supports Bike Plus in a more limited but important way by funding the staff time and coordination needed for planning, network analysis, project development, and interdepartmental collaboration. This approach is ensuring that the operating resources are aligned with the program oversight and readiness, while the physical build-out of the Bike Plus plan remains in the capital budget.
I want to pause here for just a second because I want to also ask the question around how we fund our Vision Zero program. That would be under mobility as well, correct? And as well as our scooter, bike sharing programs are also under mobility as well, correct?
Yep, Vision Zero is more under our traffic management division, but the scooters and bikes and all that is under mobility.
And when we think about, so as we're addressing Vision Zero issues, that's kind of under the, as you mentioned, the traffic management portion of the budget. So when we're thinking about solves for some of the issues that arise with Vision Zero, some of those safety concerns, again, as we think about that, that's a portion of planning, kind of ongoing planning that's part of this budget, but then solves that are part of our capital budget, our larger capital budget investments, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
We kind of already talked about this, our Mobility Enterprise Fund, but this is just showing how it's self-supporting city fund where the users are paying for the services that they are getting through that enterprise fund. Okay. So moving on to our infrastructure management, which I think may be a highlight for snow. The proposed 2026 budget is approximately $46.8 million, representing an increase of 3.2% or $1.4 million, and is funded entirely through our street construction maintenance and repair fund. The division is responsible for managing the city's transportation infrastructure, including pavement and bridge management, right-of-way permit review, and long-range planning. The division also delivers critical street maintenance services within the public right-of-way, such as street sweeping, litter control, graffiti removal, and snow and ice control. Included in the 2026 budget is $1 million dedicated to the design and construction of ADA-compliant curb ramps as well, supporting accessibility improvements throughout the city. So let's talk about snow and ice. As we enter the core winter season, the department's snow warriors are prepared and ready to respond. During winter weather events, snow warriors treat and plow approximately 4,600 lane miles of city streets, including highways within Columbus, multi-lane arterial roads, rural-like roads, and urban and residential streets. This winter, the department has enhanced the snow and ice control plan to deploy plow trucks in neighborhoods earlier when significant snowfall is forecasted. Through a pilot program, trained auxiliaries, city staff will operate plow-equipped vehicles and pickup trucks to begin servicing residential streets when there's predicted to be 4 inches or more of snowfall. We have also upgraded the Warrior Watch digital tool, allowing residents to track the service status of their streets in real time during winter weather events. In addition, the 2026 budget includes $325,000 to support the use of private snow contractors with a focus on improving response in residential areas during major events. And then finally, the division continues to strengthen partnerships with surrounding suburban communities through intergovernmental agreements to provide snow removal on city streets where it's operationally effective and efficient to do that.
And I want to pause because, we know we have a big snowstorm coming this weekend. And I do want to share, to the credit of the department, I think ensuring that we are ready for snow, especially given we don't know what's coming, right? One day it's 20 below and the next day it's 75 degrees, right, in this crazy weather environment that we are in. But being on the cutting edge of thinking about, having detectors on our streets so that we understand what the conditions are, what the temperature is, treating our streets with beet juice, right? Pre-treating them, which I know our snow warriors are going to be doing this Friday, to ensure that the salt is not enough when the temperature drops really low. This also feels like a test of my knowledge. I like when I'm looking at you, Director Young, you're shaking your head. Yeah, so I feel like I'm doing a good job, but check my work. So I just want to give credit to the department because we have looked at how are we better planning for the winter, also ensuring that we have an auxiliary program so that We've talked about this many times, but again, for folks joining us for the first time, this is where we have had other city employees that essentially have gotten licensed so that they can drive some of the smaller vehicles during this time, and we are calling out the full fleet this weekend. But this is just another way for us to ensure that we are meeting the moment of right now of increased cold weather temperatures, increased challenges around battling the different storms that are coming our way. So I want to give credit where credit is due to the department. I think about our chief snow warrior, and he often talks about how we have roadways that go from here all the way to LA and back. And that's the difference between if you live in Bexley or Reynoldsburg, where they have a much smaller footprint and their roads are going to look a little different than ours are. But I do want to pause for just a second. Director Young, do you want to just give a quick update on this weekend and what folks can anticipate and expect?
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Brosa de Padilla and Vice Chair. Right now we're still monitoring the storm. We think it could be anywhere from 4 inches, and we're getting predictions up to 12 inches. The storm could actually shift, so we're monitoring that. We don't know if we think we're going to get at least 4 to 5 inches of snow. And as you were saying, we're watching the temperatures. We're looking at temperatures that are going to drop below 20, and that's when salt stops being very effective, so we have to actually put down more. But as you stated, we have mobilized alerted our auxiliary force. We're going to have people going out and ready in our, I'll say, smaller vehicles to be in the neighborhoods at the same time we're doing our priority streets. So we should be approaching the arterials and the collectors at the same time we're going into the residentials. And if the storm is coming on Saturday, I think it's right around evening, that's what we should be looking for. So we're going to have a lot of staff out monitoring that. They'll probably start on the arterials and start working their way into the residentials at the same time. But give the drivers time, make sure, safety first, always stay away from the plows when they're moving around. If you can park that night a little more conscientious than you normally do, because a lot of our streets are parked on both sides, and I've been in plows, it's very hard to navigate some of the older streets with parking on both sides. But try and give them enough room to move around, and I'm sure we'll be in and we will clear as much as we can and have it safe and passable, hopefully within 48 to 70 hours after the event ends. And I say that because we don't know what we're getting. So be patient. Passable is always good. So.
Well, and I also, we think the thick of it will be really Sunday. Potentially, which is a better thing, right? So folks should do the planning that they need to do so that on Sunday they can have a cozy Sunday evening at home where folks are safe. I just want to remind folks, level 2 emergency quota is free for folks that do need to move around. I also want to acknowledge that doctor, I'm giving you a passing out titles here. Director Scacco is here. Thank you for joining us, Director. We also have anticipated some contracts with even some drivers. We did a set aside, I know earlier this year, that if we needed to call in additional contractors to come in, we've set aside those dollars. If we don't use them, it goes back into the fund. But I just want to acknowledge, I think, even when I came on to council, we had a couple hard winters, and I know the department took a lot of hits and very quickly responded and has use all the tactics that I just talked about to ensure that we are ready. And I just want to make that acknowledgement because as we look at, tighter budgets year after year, safety is first for us, especially during the winter months, and that planning is critical, and we have done that. I just want to also remind folks that all of our snow warriors, they are our neighbors. They are going to be working around the clock, and to give them that grace. And, if your folks might be frustrated by a minor inconvenience for them, but it looks like a 72-hour shift for others. So to just be mindful of that. So thank you for that brief commercial break from the budget. But I felt like it was timely at this point to talk about that. Deputy Director, I'll give the floor back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the Division of Traffic Management plays a critical role in improving safety for motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists throughout the city. The division's proposed 2026 budget is $24.1 million, funded entirely through the street construction, maintenance, and repair fund. This represents approximately 3.25% decrease, or $800,000, compared to the 2025 budget. And that's, again, from the renovations that we did last year that we don't need to do this year. The Division of Traffic Management is responsible for planning, education, and advocacy to support safe and efficient mobility for all roadway users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists, while improving neighborhood livability and safety. The 2026 budget continues key safety improvements and investments, including $3.6 million for the installation, replacement, and refurbishment of traffic signals, as well as $2.4 million for traffic commodities such as permanent pavement markings, traffic signage, school signals, and traffic signal components. These efforts, they all support Vision Zero, that initiative, with operating funds focused on staff coordination and analysis, while the majority of the Vision Zero infrastructure investments continue to be funded through the capital program. The Division of Design and Construction's proposed 2026 budget is $27.1 million, representing an increase of approximately 2.6%, or $678,000, compared to 2025. The Division of Design and Construction is responsible for developing high-quality construction plans, maintaining design contracts, and supporting the department's ability to build and maintain a safe and efficient transportation system. The division also manages construction contracts and provides timely construction inspection, surveying, and materials testing services in support of projects delivered by public service, public utilities, and privately funded infrastructure improvements. And that really concludes the Department of Public Services proposed 2026 budget. If there are any additional questions, happy to answer them.
I have a few questions, and then Chair, please jump in if you have additional questions. We talked a little bit about this, but this is a question that we often get. I know it's not in this budget, but can you just talk a little bit about our street resurfacing program? Because I think aside from sidewalks, this is probably one of the major questions that we get, especially now, because we know that salt beet juice is really rough on the roads. And so in the spring is when we really start to see the bumps and the bruises in the roads that people start to then experience. So can you just talk about a little bit about the process for resurfacing? And then we have multiple packages throughout the year and what that looks like and where folks might be able to find whether they are in one of the packages that are coming out.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. And it's important for residents to understand the resurfacing decisions and how those are made and how they can be a part of that process. So street resurfacing, it's driven by a combination of data, condition assessments, and resident input. We use pavement condition ratings, traffic volumes, safety considerations, and coordination with utilities to prioritize those streets citywide. But with that said, resident input absolutely matters. And one of the most effective ways that residents can advocate is to call 311. When residents submit a request through 311, whether it's for potholes, surface conditions, or recurring maintenance issues, that information is logged and tracked and incorporated into our evaluation process. Those requests help us identify problem areas and confirm where conditions are impacting daily travel. 311 allows residents to tell us directly how their street is functioning or maybe not functioning for their daily lives. So we just strongly encourage residents to reach out and call 311 if they're having any kinds of issues, because that helps us make those decisions on which projects get put into the packages.
And just a reminder for folks, 311, the unfortunate truth is that it's going to look like once you put it in that your case is closed. What that means is that it has been handed off to someone, and within departments it's moving along the system. It's one of the unfortunate things about the system that we just acknowledge is not the most user-friendly just from the outside. If at any time folks are looking to see where your 311 request is, another shortcut is first of all, you can also call 311. It's not just about putting it in online, but certainly you can also reach out to any of our council offices and our aides that can actually look at things on the back end and then respond to it, especially if it's something around potholes or other things that are traffic sidewalk related. We are happy to direct folks and to give them the answers that they might be looking for, especially if it feels like it's been a while and you're not seeing how things are moving. So as we are talking about safety, I want to stay here for just a second. So on Monday, and I believe we talked about this a couple weeks ago, tactical urbanism or quick build projects are a way that we address shorter term fixes to problematic intersections or other areas of the city where we have seen fatalities, injuries, or that are on our high injury network. And so I know that we just got a grant. We're going to, again, this will be on the agenda on Monday. But can we talk about those further investments like this toolkit that will put quicker fixes on to problematic areas of the city as it pertains to traffic, while those longer term, more costly investments come? Can we talk about that for what our strategy
Absolutely.
is and how we make those investments?
Yep, thank you, Chair. The ordinance scheduled for Monday night, it authorizes the use of federal transportation grant funds to purchase materials for a quick build toolkit. So that's including water-filled barriers, cones, traffic barrels, and temporary signage. And these purchases are made with a capital outlay of object class, but the materials are used to support pilot projects that inform future capital investment. What we often refer to as tactical urbanism is implemented by the city through that quick build approach and is best understood as an extension of the capital program, not necessarily a replacement. So the purpose of that quick build project is to allow the city to pilot and evaluate safety improvements using temporary low-cost materials before committing to those permanent capital construction. This approach is supporting the Vision Zero initiative by allowing us to respond more quickly to safety concerns on high-injury corridors and intersections, rather than waiting several years for a traditional capital project to go through the system and get delivered. And one thing to note is these projects are intentionally temporary and reversible, typically installed for 1 month to a year. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, if I could add, so this is our staff going out and putting in like reboundable posts, trying to put in, I think curb extensions where we're going to go try it out, but we don't have enough time to rebuild it or look at like actual redesign of it. So we're going out using tape, paint, these roundable posts to actually delineate where people should be and try and make intersections safer, make pedestrians more visible. It could also be used for temporary bike lanes, where we're going to set them up, try them out before we actually go through a full design. So that's what this toolkit's supposed to be, and it's also supposed to enable us to have a way to look at internally how we can produce quicker plans for this type of thing, because there's actually a lot of work by our staff when we go out and say, just go build this and put this in. We actually have to lay it out, make sure it geometrically works, and make sure we're getting sight distance, and there's all these other things. So we're trying to figure out a better way to plan for that and document it as part of this kit.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think, we made, for my first several years on council, we made significant investments in thinking about quick build projects and thinking about mobility projects for this reason, because we know that as longer term solutions come, it's a mix of state, federal dollars. We're getting, it takes a while. We have to plan, we have to break ground, we have to get the funds, et cetera. And so I know that sometimes that can be frustrating for, not sometimes, it can all the time be frustrating for our residents on the back end when they want those solutions to areas. I know, Chair and I have talked about this on both areas in both of our districts. We certainly have areas that are on the high traffic or high injury network. And so I think this is another way that we're addressing those problems more quickly while we're waiting for those longer term fixes to come down the line. I also want to talk about our investments in Bike Plus, I think we've talked a lot about providing additional mobility options. I mean, this is part of the more sidewalks, shared use paths, trails, et cetera. How does this budget reflect what folks can see in their neighborhoods, those tangible outcomes that they can see if they're biking, walking, scootering, however they may be moving around the city?
So that's probably more of a capital budget, but I'll try and address it from
Sure.
both sides. So what we're doing is we're trying to identify, again, I think Andrea mentioned it earlier, the best locations for us to go out and spend our money wisely in areas and try and figure out how to get the best, I'll say, result for the dollars we have. So this money is going to staff time to actually do that type of analysis. We have a contract that we are discussing right now that they're actually going to help us start to prioritize the Bike Plus plan. So there were higher priorities in there, but we're still going out and trying to figure out what would be the, I'll say the next priorities in line, but also trying to look at that with all the other capital programs and all the other work going on in the city. And again, trying to figure out where to put shared use path or sidewalk connections. Isn't going to be, near another project that's going on with another community too. A lot of times we look at our neighbors in other cities and what they've done and we want to connect to them too, because a lot of residents don't really realize where jurisdictions are. They just see where the sidewalk ends. So that's been our goal with the plan. We're trying to go out and look at that from an operational standpoint on where to do that. If you look at our capital program in the next budget hearing, you're going to see our capital programs really shifted to sidewalks and shared use paths. And that's through our city dollars, but also us leveraging other dollars like federal or state. So a lot of safety projects up and coming and a lot of, I'll say, sidewalk and shared use path connections in the future in '26.
When I think along those lines, as we think about the planning that it will take and the investment that it will take to ensure that we have the right staffing and personnel, how is the department responding to the pressures of the future growth that we're experiencing? I think, because we're growing at such a rapid tick, this is a long, historic American cities problem, not just a Columbus problem. Our infrastructure does not always match our growth, right? It's both a need and it's also just the growth happens faster, right, than the infrastructure can sometimes keep up. So how are we thinking about that? Not so much from the capital side, we understand, right, because we see it. But I'm just thinking about from the personnel side and from the day-to-day operating, how are we planning for that future growth when we have things like, Link Us, when we have Bike Plus, when we have Vision Zero, that is, all of it's interconnected for sure, but it's just going to get bigger. And so how are we planning for that future growth?
From a staffing perspective, we're actually going out and we've actually hired a lot of planners over the years. So we are trying to look to see where the growth is going to be. I mean, zone-in is actually changing a lot of, ability in the city to densify things, which is usually pretty good because it's in places where there are sidewalks. But when you look at a lot of the multifamily that's going into the city, some of it's in the outer regions. And so we have been looking at trying to put our sidewalk program or shared use paths out to those regions and trying to increase our connectivity. That is part of what our planning is. A lot of time you talk about our projects. A lot of times when you see it coming in for construction, it's probably been in planning for at least 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. So we're constantly looking to the future, trying to estimate where the best benefit's going to be or where development's going to happen. And I'll say we're going to keep evaluating staff because we're always doing that, trying to figure out how to best utilize our own people and make sure this is still I'll say a slightly stressful place to work in the sense of they're busy with work and there's good work. And I would say a lot of staff in our department probably don't know what slow pace is. Mm. When you think about it, you always talk about growth. That's all a lot of our staff knows is growth. So I'd say we're prepared for that.
I'm going to ask you an aspirational question. We don't do enough dreaming in these budget conversations, but if there was an area where, if we could identify where we could make the biggest investment for the biggest return on that investment, right? Especially as you think about our infrastructure as it pertains to our sidewalks, roadways, et cetera. And I say that because, we're working, this isn't about decisions, it's about resources, right? We don't have, and none of us have all of the resources that we need, but aspirationally, where would be the area that for you, again, dreaming aspirationally, that would have the biggest impact, that if we could reallocate dollars or get the most appropriate allocation for dollars, where would that be?
This is a really hard question. I'll take any help from the floor. Rory's going to.
I said the answer is my neighborhood.
Everybody's answer is my neighborhood.
I would just say that really this is why we're doing Linkus. This is why we're doing Bike Plus. So these are the things that are really helping us be able to determine where we're the projects that we need to invest in the most. And so we do a ton of evaluation as to how we best can make our roadway safer, how we can best support development that's more walkable, how we best support the growth that we're having. So that's really what we do every single day in the department. And obviously, the more resources we have, the more that we can accomplish. But really, Linkus, Bike Plus, Zone In, all of those different efforts have really laid out where we want to prioritize those investments.
Thank you for that. And I asked that question because I think it is hard when we're in the everyday about where we're making things. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that question, right? But I certainly do think as we think about a growing city, it was interesting. I had a question today that was, what's the thing that keeps you up at night? And there's a lot of things that keep me up at night, and it depends on the night. But I often think about the safety and security of our people. Like, if I had to boil it down to something, that's the thing that keeps me up at night. And it's safety and security of their bodies, safety and security of their shelter, safety and security of their transportation, their opportunity. All of the things that we talk about, it boils down to our people. And so as I think about the investments that we have made around Linkus and ensuring that people have access to opportunity, have access to jobs, have access to housing, et cetera, I appreciate that sentiment because I think, again, as I started this hearing, everything that we do at the city is important, but as I think about this committee in particular, this is how the city moves. Quite literally, every single one of us, this is how the city moves, whether it's, ensuring that we move through a snowstorm, whether it's ensuring that we have different types of ways that we can move that are safe for our people, ensuring that people have access. That is what is most important and critical. And so I want to thank you all for the work that you do. Vice Chair, do you have additional questions for? No additional questions? Well, I want to thank you for the presentation today. I want to thank you for all your work and for the work of this weekend. For what is to come, and we'll see how many inches of snow we actually get. But I want to also just give a shout out to our road warriors, remind folks to please don't crowd the plow, take your time getting to where you need to go, or maybe not go anywhere if you don't need to. Remember that CODA is a safe, efficient way to get someplace if you do need to get out, and it is free after a level 2 emergency, which it looks like we might get this weekend. Also, just take care of your neighbors while you're out there. The sidewalks are each of our responsibilities. So making sure that we are clearing sidewalks for folks so that they can move around, especially if in the event that there is school on Monday, that kiddos can get to school, that folks on mobility devices can move on sidewalks safely. I want to thank my team, Jessica Casares, Maris Lemus, and Sam Dooling, who is an extension of Team Barroso de Padilla, for all your work in preparation for this hearing. Thanks for the folks who have tuned in online and for the folks who will watch this afterwards. If there are additional questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to my office. With that, that concludes our hearing for this evening. Stay safe, everyone. Stay warm, and have a good night.